Welcome back to part 3 of songs that were way ahead of their time and gave the world a little hint of where rock and roll was headed in the years to come. We're going to start today in 1964, so let's get into it. Well, no one told me about her, the way she lied. Well, no one told me about her, how many people cried. Well, it's too late to say you're sorry. How would I know? Why should I care? Please don't bother trying to find her. She's Not There was the debut single from the Zombies, and clearly they came right out of the gate with a winner. The tune was written by the band's keyboardist, Rod Argent, who also plays a killer electric keyboard solo on something called a Hohner pianette. Argent says the tune was inspired by a song from bluesman John Lee Hooker called No One Told Me. Think about the opening line here. Well, no one told me about her, the way she lied. She's Not There made it to number 12 in the UK. Number 2 in the US, and I guarantee if you look at those two charts for the year 1964, you're not likely to find anything as dark and jazz-tinged as this. According to the band, this was only the second song they had ever written, and the money for the recording was earned through winning a local band competition. Pretty cool story. Rod Argent says the lyrics are about the anger of rejection. I think that's pretty obvious from listening to the song. And not only has our protagonist been rejected, but apparently he was the last one to know about it. Well, no one told me about her, though they all knew. But it's too late to say you're sorry. How would I know? Why should I care? Please don't bother trying to find her. She's not there. And when singer Colin Blunstone says she's not there, I think he's referring to more than just the physical sense. I think he's also trying to tell us that she is an empty, vapid person. But in spite of it, he seems to be still hooked on her. What about the chorus? Well, let me tell you about the way she looked, the way she acted, the color of her hair. Her voice was soft and cool. Her eyes were clear and bright. But she's not there. That's an awful lot of very specific detail about a woman he supposedly doesn't care about. The chord progression has elements of 3 different minor modes. Pretty cool. Dorian, Aeolian, and harmonic minor. So we start off with an A minor. I like to call this a root position B minor with an A on the bass, although this could be called a second inversion D6. Either way, this chord implies a Dorian minor. Then we get the 3-chord C major, and we move back down. What about this F major chord? That's not indicative of Dorian. That would indicate Aeolian minor. And the second time, we get an A major rather than an A minor. That's a secondary dominant. It's the 5 of 4, the 4 chord being D. And then we go to the D. It's a D major, which once again puts us back in Dorian. But then very quickly moves to D minor, the classic 4 to 4 minor change. That is Aeolian again. E minor. A minor, D, D minor, A minor, E7. That comes from the A harmonic minor. Really interesting. So I think it's clear that both musically and lyrically, there's a level of sophistication here that was not common on the pop charts of 1964. With its dark mood and jazz influence, for me, this song is sort of a sneak preview of things that bands like The Doors would be doing roughly 3 years down the road. I'm not in love, so don't forget it. It's just a silly phase I'm going through. So just because I call you up, don't get me wrong, don't think you've got it made. I'm not in love. This song is a really interesting case in that in some respects, I think it's very much of its time, 1975 to be exact. The pretty melody, the use of seventh chords, the Fender Rhodes piano. But in other respects, it's always sounded much more 80s to me, due mainly to the ethereal, synthesized sounding voices that form the backdrop to the tune. We'll talk in a moment about how that sound was created. One online commenter said, "This tune always reminds me of an 80s Trevor Horn production." Trevor Horn, remember, was a member of the Buggles. And I totally agree. And one rock journalist said this tune must have been very influential on Billy Joel's Just the Way You Are. And I think that's true as well. Listen to the two back to back. The song was written by 10cc members Eric Stewart and Graham Gouldman, and believe it or not, was initially intended to be done in a bossa nova style, which I think works really well. I'm not in love, so don't forget it. It's just a silly phase I'm going through. But inexplicably, the other two band members, Kevin Godley and Lol Krem, didn't like the song done this way, and in fact, they called it crap. So it was abandoned for quite a while. But then the band noticed that their staff were walking around humming the melody. That's a very positive sign in a pop song. So they decided to revive it, but Godley insisted that if they were going to revive it, they would have to do something radical with it. And he came up with the idea of using mostly voices for the background. So here's what they did. First, they recorded Goldman, Godley, and Krem singing "Ah" 16 times for each of the 12 notes of the chromatic scale. Then Stewart created 12 tape loops, which could be run through separate channels of the mixing desk. This effectively turned the mixing board into a kind of instrument which the band members could play by moving up 3 or 4 faders at a time to create chords. It's an amazing effect, and the use of the tape loops reminds me a lot of what the Beatles had done on songs like Tomorrow Never Knows, but it's definitely different as well. I love the lyrics, which were written by Eric Stewart. For years, I assumed they were written from the perspective of a jilted lover, desperately trying to convince the world and himself that he's not still hopelessly hung up on his ex. I like to see you, but then again, that doesn't mean you mean that much to me. And I've always loved, I keep your picture upon the wall. It hides a nasty stain that's lying there. But in reality, the idea for the song came when Stewart's wife once asked him why he rarely said he loved her anymore. Stewart's response was that if he said it all the time, the phrase would become meaningless and degraded. So he wrote these lyrics as a clever way to say he loved her without really saying it, repeating the phrase, "I'm not in love," and then following it up with all the things that made it obvious that he really was. I've always viewed Jane's Addiction as a sort of missing link between 80s hard rock and grunge. People forget it was 1987 when their first record came out. And I can tell you, nothing sounded like that at that time. The music was heavy, the guitars were loud, but while bands like Motley Crue and Rat were singing about girls and partying, Perry Farrell's lyrics were intelligent and thought-provoking. And again, remember, this is pre-Nirvana, pre-Alice in Chains, pre-Pearl Jam, and all the rest. Pigs in Zen first appeared on the band's self-titled debut album in live form, and the studio version appeared on their second album, Nothing Shocking, but only as a bonus track on the CD and cassette versions, not on the vinyl release. I could have really picked any song from Nothing Shocking for purposes of this video, but I chose this one just because I like it a lot, and I think it's a great example of a tune that musically could be at home on an Aerosmith record, but lyrically is something else altogether. As the title implies, the lyrics are about the fact that animals really do live a Zen-like existence compared to we humans. Unlike us, they're not endlessly stressing out about what's to come, what happened before. They truly live in the moment because that's all they can do. I don't know about you, but whenever I hear about some person doing something really terrible and people say, oh, he's a pig, I think to myself, wow, that's really insulting to pigs because like most animals, they don't do the premeditated awful things that humans do. Pig goes in the mud when he tires. Pigs in Zen. Pig is nude, unashamed. Pigs in Zen. Pig mounts sow when he's wound. Pigs in Zen. Pig eats shit, but only when he hungers. Pigs in Zen. Pigs in Zen. These are not the kind of lyrics you were getting on a Bon Jovi record in 1987. And while it's true that at that time, a lot of the alt-rock / indie bands were taking on more challenging subjects lyrically, they were generally not combining them with the hard-hitting, almost Zeppelin-like music of Jane's Addiction. Musically, this one is really simple, pretty much 2 chords. We get the classic E to F sharp move and B. Dave Navarro's lead guitar playing is not groundbreaking in any way, but it's well done, very tasteful. This is mostly F-sharp Dorian, but I like the way he throws in some major thirds here and there, and also some very long, soulful bends. So that's it for this one. Hope you all enjoyed it, and it was fun for me. I got to cover 3 artists that had not appeared on my channel up to this point, so that's always cool. Remember, financial contributions are hugely appreciated. Buy me a coffee, PayPal, Venmo, and Zelle are the options. Look for the links in the description. And of course, make sure you've done the usual YouTube stuff, liking, subscribing, and whatnot. Thanks a lot. See you soon.